In this case, it was crippling the project. The appraiser made a $3 million error on a $5 million project. They came forward and explained that it was a comma that was actually a problem in the computer program they were using. I don't know what kind of computer program they were using in 1981, but it was probably in black and green. And there was a comma that was misplaced, and there was a section that was supposed to be 3,120,000, and it showed up at 312,000. Brown Engineering had to do the project with the loss. They won in Superior Court, they won in the Court of Appeal, but the Supreme Court overturned it and said, your mistake, you are allowed to review your bids. They considered the fact that they had 4 weeks to present their bid and reread it, and they didn't find the explanation adequate to allow them to rebid. So they were forced to execute the contract. Very important to make sure that there's no financial errors in your documents.
Now, without making an error, you may find major or minor irregularities in tender documents. When it comes to major irregularities, the document or your bid is going to be automatically rejected. As for minor irregularities, they will normally pass through. What we find as examples of minor irregularities, you forgot to sign. Well, that's not going to change much in the content of your bid. That's just a material irregularity. If you're missing a resolution of the Board of Directors that authorizing you to submit the bid, it's not the end of the world. If you forgot to write which subcontractors you use, unless it is specifically indicated inside the tender documents that you need to list every single one of the subcontractors, it'll pass as a minor irregularity. There have been cases where the persons preparing the bid did not visit the site before preparing the bid. It's at your own risk. I mean, if they tell you it's one site and you don't go and it turns out being completely different, you're going to pay the cost if you didn't do your on-site visit. I mean, if you end up having to build inside of a bog when you thought you were going to build on rock, there's different costs and different techniques that are going to be involved. So that's up to you, but it's a minor irregularity. Your bid is still valid. And any other irregularity in the form of the documents is going to be okay. Major irregularities are the important or essential elements that were written in the tender documents that you need to respect. Now, out of these elements, you're going to have the date or the time. If they have to say, it's a bit like the conference before us, if the bid needs to be entered by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, do not send it at 3:01, it's going to be rejected. 3 o'clock is 3 o'clock on a said date. That's it.
In the case Entreprise Jacques Dufour against Attorney General of Quebec, we are looking at a joint venture in between a company that is in Ville de Saguenay and Inus from Mastoyache. What happened during that case was that on May 8, 2006, there was supposed to be the last day to deposit tender to build an important construction on or near Lac Saint-Jean. When that date was attained, there was no one that was there to receive the last day bid at the office where they were supposed to be delivered. So Entreprise Jacques Dufour kept their bid and called all day to see where they could deposit it, but they were never able to contact the company that was offering the tender. On the next day, the company realized that they made a mistake and that there was no one to receive the bids, so they reopened the bid. At that time, there's another bidder called Entreprise RG that submitted a bid. We had never seen them during the first round of bid. They had never deposited anything. They are depositing it on the extension that is given, so in between May 8th and May 12th, and they end up being the lowest bidder, of course, because if they hadn't, there would be no court case. Is that bid valid or not, was the question. Is it a mistake a major irregularities to not have produced a bid during the first opening, but just during the extension. Well, the court ended up rejecting Entreprise RG bid and accepting Entreprise Jacques Dufour. Why? Because even if there was a major irregularity and both bid had not been able to be deposited, we have to go with the principle of fairness to every bidder. If RG didn't submit it at the first time, the extension was for people that were not able to deposit it on May 8th. Entreprise RG was not one of those people. They hadn't even started working on a bid at that time. So if we want to be fair with everyone, the extension was only available to people that were not able to deposit it. So Entreprise Jacques Dufour ended up winning this one. And since we're a bit short in time, we already talked about Construction Bécon. That was the fraudulent tender with the appraiser that didn't have the right amount of experience. So I'm going to skip this one.
So the other elements are the absence of a subcontractor list, absence of required financial security. Normally you have to give a deposit or a financial statement from a bank that you have all the money ready. The breach of a law and order, failure to respect addendums, and any amendment has an impact on the price.
As far as qualification goes, we are looking at Hervé Pomerleau against Société de Transport de Montréal. It was heard by the Superior Court on April 8, 2011, and the motion to appeal was rejected on July 6, 2011, so it's pretty recent. What happened is that La Société de Transport de Montréal asked for 10 different bids for the construction of a transport center in Ville-la-Salle. Of all of those bids that were received, the lowest one was Hervé Pomerleau. Problem is that contrary to the bidding document, the ventilation control were not up to par with what STM wanted. The position of Hervé Pomerleau was to say, well, if my bid is not valid for the ventilation part, you can still give it to me for the rest. Just hire someone else to do ventilation that is up to par with what you guys actually want. But a bid is, it's a complete document. You cannot fragment it in part and then say, well, I'm just going to take the one that pleases me and I'm just going to ask people asking for tender to go and find someone else, because it would be then 2, 3, or even 4 process, so it would be way more expensive. So the court ended up not giving the contract to Pomerleau because they said your bid had to be unified and be accepted as a whole, not in part.
Now, when you have bids that are submitted, the client that is asking for bids has the right not to accept the lowest bid. That's an important aspect that we can't forget. Not only does he have a right not to accept the lowest bid, but can also decide to refuse all bids that were submitted. There are valid reasons and reasons that have been judged invalid for refusing all bids or not accepting the lowest tender. Out of the valid reasons, if the price is excessive, if the decision to modify the product, if you take into to do something else instead, if you require additional guarantees, if the documents were not exactly clear as to what you are wanting, that's a big problem that we often see, or if you decided that finally you're going to do the work yourself. Reasons that have been judged invalid are that you did the process, but you didn't really want to award the contract. That mostly happens in cases where you want to give the project to your friend, but your friend doesn't really know how much it costs. So you said, okay, I'll put out a tender process, and once I get the lowest cost, you can do it for me at that price. That's not acceptable. If that's the reason for refusing all bids, you're going to have to take the lowest bidder if it goes to court. So you really have to be careful with the reasons why you're going to dismiss the lowest bidder or refuse all bids that were presented to you.
In the Desbrunets case against Centre Hospitalier de la Vallée de l'Outaouais, what happened is that basically 3 bidders submitted to obtain a contract of renovation for that hospital, and 2 of them forgot to add taxes to their bid. Desbrunets was the only one that added taxes. Desbrunets was not the lowest bidder, but they asked to obtain the contract nonetheless because their joint venture was the only one that filled, according to them, that filled the call for tenders correctly because they added taxes. What the court decided, it was the Court of Appeal on January 23rd, 2012, was that taxes are easy to add. We know how much they are a fixed number, so it's not adding taxes is not a reason to eliminate a bid. It's something that can be done quite simply. So they added taxes and gave the contract to the lowest bidder, judging that not adding taxes was a minor irregularity and not a reason to restart the whole process.
Okay, so while Pascal is flipping through the different slides here, we're running out of time. Essentially what we need to say is that all the contracts need to be done in good faith. No matter what you do, whatever decision you take, you have to make sure that you're acting in good faith at all times. And that's the best way that you're going to be able to get an equitable and transparent procedure, either on the side of the client or on the side of the bidder. Important issues to take into consideration when you're preparing a bid or when you're preparing an offer to tender is you have to identify the product or the service that you want clearly so that everyone understands exactly what you're looking for. Identify all the essential terms and conditions. Label them essential terms and conditions. That way you're sure that everyone that's going to bid is going to make sure that they respect those terms. So if there's one thing that you don't want, make sure you write it. For the qualifications, if you want to limit the number of bidders, put a lot more qualifications in. For example, generally if you're having contracts up north, you need to put a clause where there has to be a partnership with at least 51% of control by a Native enterprise. That way you're sure that at least Native communities are working in the project. If you have terms with regards to the area or the territory where you want people to already be carrying out business, you can add that in also. Mutual agreements are often a lot easier to carry out than tenders. You don't have to go through the whole process, but sometimes you're just trying to look out for the best partner, so they might be a good term. Addendums are essential. We don't like extras, so try to put everything out in the contract at first. And equitable treatment is the key to making sure that you don't have any problems before the courts.
As a quick conclusion, if I may, Plan-Nord is really building Northern Quebec right now, and to the Native communities, we're building it on your turf. If you choose the right partner, and if you act in good faith and submit carefully reviewed tender, there's no reason why you shouldn't be an integral part of building your own land and be really proud about it. Thank you to have listened to us.